What's going on? What's going on, everybody? All right, so real quick, just want to get into and talk about and discuss these book of laws, because a lot of the times, what you will find as a pattern in society or just life in general is that a lot of times one person might come up with a book of laws, but another person might come up with another interpretation of that book of laws to try to control that book and stuff like that, right? So it's really interesting when you see different rulerships doing that, because that's why the Bible has so many different versions of that book. That Bible has so many different versions of it, so many different perspectives of it, because every rulership modifies that book to, fit their desire and stuff like that, right? Every time the law is changed in our society, so they can lay forth a new foundation of what law, justice, and order mean within a modern society, even is, right? Today, modern day society. Back then, it was just the same shit. They was trying to lay a foundation of what it means to have order on that land and stuff like that. And a lot of the times, that law or order or that book of law, the holy book that they make you follow, the ideology that's made up of a bunch of other ideas that they make you follow, that's that ideology, the book of laws is what they call God. And as long as you follow that book of laws on that land, you'll manifest positively, only because since the government is running that land, you can't necessarily go against what they believe is right or wrong. Like, you can do it, but it just depends on where it is. Like, back in the day, they was cutting people's heads off, doing all types of shit just for going against that book of laws, that ideology that's made up of a set of ideas. And if you don't agree with that right or wrong, then you're gonna get into some issues with the local authority and stuff like that, right? Go to China and try to talk about democracy or whatever the fuck, another ideology that rules in the West, and try to bring that there, you're going to be in, or try to speak against that ideology in China, you're going to get real quick response about putting you in jail. You better be careful what the fuck you saying, all types of shit, because it's like, basically, it's like standing at a 180 degree at someone else. And when you stand at a 180 degree of opposing someone else in some way, shape, or form, they view you as some type of opposition, right? And look, it's not just Christianity; it's also Islam. Because a lot of Muslims claim, like, oh, the Quran is the direct word of God, which because I explained that earlier. It's not the word of God, anything like that. It's just an idea that people agree with about law and order on that land and stuff like that, right? Now, that book is like that, but that's why they started coming up with things like the hadith, things like the interpretation of the Quran, the tafsir, so they can control the interpretation of the Quran, just like how they was changing these versions of the Bible so it can cater to that ruler's particular desire at that particular location and stuff like that, right? And their desire a lot of the time is just to have power and control over you. And that can come through violence in many different ways and stuff like that. AKA, put the fear of God in you. Put the fear of you opposing that idea in your mind, or put the fear of you opposing my ideas in your mind, and make examples of people, right? That's why they came up with that energy of, yeah, let's make an example of this person so they don't think of doing that and shit like that, right? So when it comes to Islam as well, when I read, for example, the history of my country, North Sudan and stuff like that, a lot of people came after the so-called prophet, who's not a prophet. It's just a person playing a virtue on that land, manifesting scenarios, positive and negative, and they just happen to be everyone's favorite superhero, aka Muhammad, right? Like, think about when you watch a movie, right? You're watching a movie, you see your favorite character, that character inspire you, and you want to be like it. So just like how there's Muhammad in Arabia, there's a bunch of other Muhammads after him that are trying to play out that virtue, that character that he did, to manifest similar circumstances and situations and stuff like that, right? So when it comes to the Quran case and stuff like that, there's hadiths and tafsirs and things of that nature's book that are explanations to interpret the Quran. But you gotta remember, that's coming from another mind's filter. So, and you gotta remember, men and women in general on the 3D on Earth are all most of the time low vibrational, demonic, and just are trying to get their desires met, trying to get their desires wet, type shit like that, right? So they'll create some type of interpretation just in a different format in Christianity, because again, like, when the snake wiggle, it's gonna find a way. So they might tell you, oh yeah, the Quran is the perfect book, we can't do that, but they're gonna create some type of interpretation so they can have you interpret it in their way, right? And it's amazing because there's a lot of different Islamic groups that do this, but they create this like bias about it, and they look at it like, oh no, we're not doing that, but yet they'll sit there oppose each other while they're all doing the same thing. But it's crazy, because Cause it's like, man, it's just wild, B. It's just wild, bro. But yeah, just keep in mind that all these different rulerships, all these different religions are just trying to control the, like Islam, Christianity, came out of Hebrew, whatever the fuck, Torah, whatever the fuck, you know what I'm saying? And they're just trying to control the interpretation of the Hebrew text in their own way so they can maintain like some type of rulership or run that geographical location. That's why you see all these like holy wars. It's not really holy wars, it's really just ideology wars. Now, my ideology should rule that land. This is what's right. Ah, now that's what's wrong. But really, it's like both of them is wrong, really, at the end of the day. Because it's like, you're supposed to be able to get out of your own mind, see something else from someone else's perspective, aka access that seventh house Libra energy and stuff like that. So you can know how to build on your individual, build with them, with your individuality, with your passion, because we know God is beyond like a book. Like God is just life itself. Like you are a piece of God walking the earth as well. So you know what I mean? So don't get lost in any of these religious books. Don't get lost in any of this stuff. Because at the end of the day, all it's talking about is the Spirit of God, and the Spirit of God manifests itself in many different shapes, in many different forms, in many different properties and stuff like that. That's why the best way to look at God is really just through nature, to tell you the truth. Because it's like the Spirit's in everything. The Spirit in the tree has a certain virtue, has a certain property, aka wood. If you follow like Chinese astrology, they always tell you about the alchemy of fire, water, air, wood, and metal, and things like that. Because that's their system of interpreting God's properties, God's alchemy, and how to transmute these things. Because what is transmutation? Transmutation is the seasons and stuff like that, right? It plays out through that as well. And you can transmute stuff within. And when you read books like the Bible, the Quran, it's also just them trying to teach you to transmute things within. But you don't need that stuff, because a lot of the times a lot of that stuff is infiltrated and manipulated. And when a human is lost in the left brain, reptilian brain, they don't know how to look at these things any other way but that way, not understanding that a man had to sit back, speculate on something creatively, aka the right brain, creative brain, and come up with logical interpretations about what these things mean and stuff like that, right? Or just, building that construct, that logic, that word to just describe whatever it is that they're feeling or seeing and stuff like that, or whatever creative vision, whatever feeling they're trying to follow and shit like that. Hopefully it's not Eve and stuff like that, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say pretty much. So yeah, there's no need to follow all these religions anymore. Like I said, just literally, God is in front of us every day. And it's amazing, man, because like, man, it's like, you see a white person, you see a piece of God. You see a black person, you see a piece of God. You see an Asian person, you see a piece of God. You see you see all these animals on that go through the air, the sea, the land. You're seeing a different piece of God or an evolution of God and stuff like that, because it's all just decompartmentalized versions of God and shit like that. And it's like, if life can't understand each other, then it's like life, because everything is a system. Everything's already an ecosystem. You just gotta like kind of get with the program rather than trying to go against the program. And a lot of the times these religious groups are trying to go against the programs because they're trying to indulge in physicality too much, not realizing that we're all just spirit. And it's like spirit really got stuck on earth. Like we wasn't really supposed to, like, it's not, we're not supposed to be on earth, but we're supposed to be just a free spirit, constantly changing, not being stuck. That's why when you're in the body, it becomes really harder to change and stuff like that, right? People get lost in the mind. Spirits get lost in reincarnations, cycles, and things like that. Playing out the same movie again and again and again, not realizing that that movie itself is their hell, and things of that nature, right? So, yeah, I think that's all I really had to say. With that being said, peace out, everybody.